This past week saw the conclusion of perhaps the greatest Schmoedown trilogy of all time. That plus the 2020 Ultimate Schmoedown Singles Tournament is underway. The first few first-round matches have taken place, and we're going to be breaking them down. Hello and welcome to Repeat the Question. I'm David Sackrider, and this is your one-stop shop for everything related to the world of the movie trivia Schmoedown. First things first, there's a little bit of housekeeping. I want to make you aware of how the show is going to be running over the next few weeks. There's a few minor tweaks and changes in the past. The way I've been handling it is I've covered every single match in depth, no matter the runtime. And usually we've been keeping shows to right around an hour. But that was when there were at most 3 matches a week, sometimes 4. But most of the time, 2 matches a week. Going forward, this past week we had 6 matches. There's 7 matches next week, and there are going to be matches on every single weekday. So to keep the workload manageable for me, but also to keep the show times down and manageable and digestible for you, the fans, we're going to keep the show to in-depth coverage of 3 matches. So I'm going to pick out 3 matches that I think are the most important to talk about every week. And those are going to be the ones I cover in depth. And then the other 3 matches that take place during the week aren't going to get as much attention, but I'm still going to break down scores and some key moments and important things from those as well. So that's going to try to keep the show to about an hour. Again, lightens my workload a little bit, but also nobody wants to listen to me talk for longer than an hour, so it keeps things digestible for you. It's a win-win on both our sides, and I think that's the best way to handle the show going forward while I'm working by myself here at Repeat the Question. The other thing is, with that in mind, if you find yourself wanting to know more about a match that I'm not covering as in depth, then be sure to check out rtqpodcast.com. That's our website. I'm writing match recaps about every single match, usually posted within an hour of when they air. So, one of the matches I'm not covering as in depth this week is going to be the Lon Harris Sabina Graves match. If you want to know exactly what happened in that match, be sure to check out the match recap on rtqpodcast.com in order to get the full breakdown of the match. So that gets the housekeeping out of the way. The first major Schmoedown related thing we've got now, there was a bit of news. The chairman, Christian Harloff, broke on the Schmoedown rundown some things related to what's going to happen if there's a potential tiebreaker for first place at the end of the year. He said that this only applies to teams that finish tied for first place. And it's strictly a tie based on points. So it's not like a tie down the board. As long as they're tied by points, then at Schmoedown Spectacular, those 2 teams are going to have to put up 2 players to play in a 3-round match to decide which team wins the year. Should it be that 3 teams are tied for first place, which is very possible given the way the season has gone to this point, then it'll be a triple threat match, but that's the way they're looking at handling the tiebreaker for the end of the season. I think that this is a really fun way to do it. We could see like a Dan Murrell versus Chance Ellison, match where we get to see Murrell, play at his high caliber, but without the belt on the line potentially. There's some interesting stuff that could come from that potential match that I'm kind of excited for. And also, you add in the stakes of the factions and everything else, but that just strictly is for when looking at the tiebreaker at the end of the year. The tiebreaker is going to be one particular match to decide it all. And I'm all for that. I think it'll be a fun little add-on to Schmoedown Spectacular if right at the end, after the singles title, they're like, but wait, there's more, and we get one more match out of it. So with the news out of the way, we're finally going to get into the matches here. The first match we saw the first match that we're going to talk about, I should say, was Marisol Lady Justice McKee makes her debut against Bonnie, the Smokeshow Somerville. It is a grudge match for Somerville and a proving ground match for McKee. And let's get into the promos a little bit, as I generally do. I'm not really sure what I expected from this match, but what I got was definitely not what I was expecting. I think I kind of just expected Bonnie Somerville to come into this match doing the same sort of thing that she's done in her last few matches, which is show up and be there. But look, she really has some beef with Shannon Barney, I guess, because she brought her A game to play, and it was just, the promos were bananas listening to both her and Shannon Barney go back and forth. But honestly, it was kind of like a breath of fresh air. It was just something different. Not every match has to be this super high stakes. Well, oh no, the Finstock Exchange has got to get this match or else they're done for the year or something like that. Some matches can just be this zany goofball fun. And, that's exactly what this one was. And as we get into the actual match itself, at the end of round one, Marisol McKee led 8-5. She missed the bonus, but hit all 8 questions in round one to have that 3-point lead heading into round two. She elects to go first with the lead, going 4 of 5 for 5 points in the category of 2000s movies, giving up just the single 1-point steal to Bonnie Somerville, who then goes 2 of 4 for 4 points in the category of Meryl Streep, giving up 2 steals for a massive 4 points to Lady Justice, resulting in the 17-10 Marisol McKee lead heading into round 3. And I think I saw a 7-point lead and pretty much thought that was the game. Not just because, it was Bonnie Somerville, but because a 7-point lead is pretty much impossible to overcome. Bonnie Somerville tries her best in round 3, though. She hits her 2 and her 5, but misses her 3 to force Marisol McKee to answer and avoid the TKO. And Lady Justice is able to do that, hitting the 2-pointer with ease to get the 19-17 win and actually enter the singles tournament. And look, to talk about this match, the first thing that's really important to discuss is the fact that I really think that Marisol McKee can be a star in this league. It is tough to tell off one match, and I think that's been hard for all of the rookies that have debuted in these play-in matches. It is difficult to tell what they're going to do in the league based off one match, but this is one crazy, insane match. You're talking about a pretty great showing. She only missed 2 questions in the match, 826 possible points earned. That's phenomenal in singles. But I really think that the big kicker here was that she maintained a calm demeanor no matter what was going on the other side of the table. And I think part of that is the digital setting, which, Bonnie Somerville in this case wasn't literally on the opposite end of the table from her. So that does help to kind of keep yourself calm, but she's in her debut match and she's able to keep this level of ease. And I felt like that was really impressive for a rookie and shows that veteran level of commitment to the game that is enough to win you games down the stretch. James White played in a match this past week that I'm not going to cover as in depth, but he had that similar thing where he was able to close out the game because he played like a veteran down the stretch. And that's how I felt about Marisol McKee in this match, was that she was playing like a veteran to the end. And that is super important. I think she's got her first real test with Paul Oyama next week. And it's, who knows which Paul Oyama we're going to see. We could see a Paul Oyama that is like what we saw against him playing Shazam. Or we could see the Paul Oyama that, won the singles title. It is very hard to tell with Paul Oyama which one we're going to see. But nevertheless, Paul Oyama's proven himself as a player. And so because of that, I think that he is going to be her first real test. Look, you talk about Marisol McKee in this match, and yeah, she played phenomenally, but there are two sides to every match, and a winning side and a losing side. In this case, on the losing side is Bonnie, the Smokeshow Somerville. And a lot of people are going to write her off because she's got that 0-4 record. But the way I look at it is this is Somerville's best game to this point. Yes, she's 0-4, but 17 points is not terrible. It's certainly not fantastic, but I don't think it's the end of the world, and it's a drastic improvement from her first match earlier this season. Or rather, her first match this season, which was one of the first matches this year. Obviously, she's 0-4, so it wasn't her first match when she played in that one. But, 17 points is not terrible. The problem is that 0-4 record, it's basically means she has to be done in singles. I remember back when the league was a lot younger, a lot of times you would see teams would get to 0-3, and then the 0-3, or rather they would get to 0-2, and the 0-2 teams would play each other in a retirement match. Because once you got to 0-3, you were basically done. There was nothing more you could do to salvage your career at that point. It was better for the teams to break up and reform with new people in order to continue in the league. I think that that's kind of what's going to happen to Bonnie Somerville's singles career here. There's not really that much she can do. Can left to do on her own because an 0-4 hill is so hard to climb out of. She would have to win 4 straight just to break even. And even then, in order to get to a title down the line or anything else, it would be very difficult. She would have to go on a crazy run to do that. And that would require a lot of studying work. And quite frankly, I don't think she's that type of competitor. So where I see Bonnie Somerville fitting in going forward, because I wouldn't just say, she's done, kick her out of the Schmoedown, never invite her back. I do think she's got a place in it because she clearly is demonstrating not only this ability to improve, but also I think she could play an interesting character going forward. And those aspects make her valuable to the league. It's just a matter of, is a team going to draft her? Because I think that if a faction decides to draft her, maybe waste a 10 spot on her, they could team her up with somebody more level-headed, and maybe put together an all-star team. I think she could be a good B player on your B team. Obviously you want your 2 superstars on your faction to be your A team, but I think that a B team made up of a Bonnie Somerville and maybe an established rookie, like a Jader Paramo or, Adam Collins or Marisol McKee or somebody of that nature, somebody to keep her calm and in the game, but also to complement her knowledge would potentially be a killer combo. I don't think that's something that people are necessarily looking as close at because they want to write her off so soon. But I actually think teams is a very good next step for Bonnie Somerville. So with that out of the way, we kind of talked about Paul Oyama in that match. He's Marisol McKee's next match, but he also had a match this past week as a member of Final Exam when he fell to Shazam in that Schmoedown Throwdown undercard First off, talking about the promos, I really felt that I really liked what Shazam did with their promos, with their quote unquote entrance in this match. I was listening to William Bibiani talk on John Roca's show, The Outlaw Nation. I was listening to him talk about the fact that in this digital age, you can't really do entrances in the same way that he used to do the entrances. So a lot of the entrances have to be wrapped up in the promos, and that they're trying to and when I say there, I'm talking about Shazam, is trying to find new ways to kind of do that, especially since that's what he's really been known for in the league. And I think that he does a great job in this match. I'm not really generally a big fan of the overly theatrical introductions. I just never have been. I'll take the Five Horsemen leading Roca to the ring more than I will the long cinematic Bibiani introductions generally. That's just how I have always connected with the league. I've never really connected with the cinematic entrances, because to me it feels like it stops the entrance to the match. Still, you get all this hype from the promos and everything, and then the cinematic entrance happens, and it feels like it just doesn't feel like it connects to the rest of it. But that's where I think that this entrance worked really well, because it connects directly to what's going on in the match. I really like this idea that Lon Harris is having this bad influence on the kid. I thought that was a smart way to approach the way that they were going to play out their promos and their entrance in this one. And I really like that it had a direct connection to, the people that they were playing, which meant that therefore, it can be associated as a storyline in the canon of the league. It has a purpose. I feel like sometimes while the cinematic intros and entrances look cool, and I'll definitely commend them for thinking outside the box with coming up with them and doing those sorts of things, a lot of times they fall flat for me because they don't do anything in terms of the match. And what I felt like for this one was that it did do something, in the very least, that it connected to the overall story they were trying to tell, the characters that they had to deal with. And for that, I will commend Bibiani. He really sold me on this one. With the entrances out of the way, that brings us to the actual match. Once again, this was a pay-per-view match, so I can't show the highlights for it just yet, but I'm still going to break it down nonetheless. You just have to see me staring at my notes while I do it. At the end of round one, Shazam led 15-12 after a rough first round for Paul Oyama. He went 5 of 8 in round one, and that left them in a 3-point hole going into the second round. If Paul Oyama plays like Paul Oyama normally plays, then they're tied, if not have the lead, going into that second round. But Paul Oyama was thrown off by something. Could have been the internet, but that had an effect on all the competitors. All the competitors had a rough connection in this match, and so he only goes 5 of 8, which results in the 15-12 score in favor of Shazam at the end of round one. Then in round two, Final Exam goes first. They go 5 of 6 in Sly and Arnie for 9 points, giving up a 1-point steal to Shazam. Shazam takes this momentum into their category, but they're only able to secure 4 of 6 questions in the category of Clint Eastwood for 8 points. Also giving up a 1-point steal and resulting in a 24-22 Shazam lead heading into the final round. I really felt like Final Exam did a good job of bouncing back here in round two to shorten that deficit. If they were able to pick up that other steal, I think would have been even more important, because obviously a 1-point deficit is better than a 2-point deficit. But picking up one of the two was very important. In round 3, the two teams bounced back and forth on their 2 and their 3, but ultimately Final Exam can't hit their 5-point question, which results in the 29-27 final for Shazam. So Shazam moves on to next week to take on Who's the Boss. And focusing on Shazam, I think that this match was a good match for them to get out of the way, because obviously the internet connection thing aside, they definitely, I felt like, showed some ring rust in this match. This is as Brendan Meyer put it, this is a 30-point team that really was only able to get 29 points in the match. And so, getting that ring rust out of the way, getting the jitters out of the way is really important. And having this match before they play a tougher competitor ultimately in Who's the Boss was key to them, because now Who's the Boss is going to be coming in with that little bit of ring rust, and Shazam's got that one more match under their belt, which is going to be all the more important. Shazam, nevertheless, obviously hitting questions, but also they've got some gameplay things to tighten up heading into next week. They burned 2 JTEs on that question in round 2 over which war Clint Eastwood's character in Gran Torino fought in. Here's the thing with that question. They knew it was between 2 things. So checking to multiple choice was smart because while they knew it was 2 different things, they weren't sure which one in particular it was. Obviously, they were pretty confident that both of those things were going to be listed in multiple choice. They weren't really using the multiple choice to suss out the answer, but rather using the multiple choice to limit the amount of points that their opponents can get, because they can say, well, I'm between the Vietnam War and the Korean War, and answer Vietnam, and then their opponents could step up and say the Korean War and get it for 2 points. So at the very least, limiting them to that 1 point was important. The issue is, if you're going to use 2 JTE rules on a question, on one single question, 1, you better get that question right. And 2, you definitely have to get that question right if it's your last 2 JTE rules in the game. They are very lucky that Final Exam didn't bounce it back to them for their 5-pointer, or that they didn't need it on their 2 and their 3, because the fact that they had no JTE rules in round 3 is extremely dangerous. So that's going to be just one of those things they've got to fine tune. Their communication has to be just a little bit better, and it's hard. I've watched all these teams go at it as these teams matches have wrapped up, and only Final Exam has really gotten the communication under control. And that was because they played 3 matches. Every team's got to figure out their rhythm for how they're going to talk to each other when they're deliberating, since they're not in the same room. And the other different factors that are associated with the online play. Taking a look at the losing side of things with Final Exam, the one I want to key in on is Paul Oyama. Obviously, he had a rough game. If Marisol McKee's looking at this match, she's going, well, I hope I get that Paul Oyama, because she's definitely got to be feeling better about her prospects seeing that. Nevertheless, I think Oyama really wants that singles belt back. I think I just have this gut feeling, and maybe it's my bias, because I certainly want to see him win the tournament, but I expect him to bounce back from this. I expect him to beat Marisol McKee. I don't think that a 5-point first round is indicative of the type of Paul Oyama that we've seen over the last few weeks. This was a rough first round for him for whatever reason, and I still expect him to play at a supremely high level going forward. he'll be the first to tell you that, he didn't play well and that the loss was on him, or that, he's got to shore up some of those things. But I also think that he's one of those competitors that just has that drive that he's not going to let this be the end of it. So with the undercard out of the way, that's going to move us into the next match here. The main event in the Schmoedown Throwdown saw Dangerous Dan Murrell defend the singles title against Ethan Big Time Erwin. It was the third match between the two. In the first, Ethan TKO'd Dan. Ethan is one of only two players to ever do that. In the second, Dan had to be perfect in order to beat Ethan to win the belt back off of Ethan. And now, Dan had to prove he was the GOAT again to defend the belt. And I really think that that's what this match was, more so than anything else. It was Dan's statement that this is why I'm the best to ever play the game. He opens the first round down 7-6. So Erwin's got the lead. Erwin elects to defer to Murrell in round 2, who goes 3 of 4 for 5 points in fantasy sci-fi, but gives up a 1-point steal to his opponent. Erwin's unable to capitalize on this momentum. However, he's only able to go 2 of 4 for 4 points in the category of Spike Lee. He also gives up a 1-point steal. So now we're tied at 12 apiece. In round 3, there's category of movie release dates. Both are able to hit that, but the difference is Dan Murrell, championship experience, comes into play. He picks up 2 points off the bet. Erwin only bets 1, 14-13, Dan Murrell lead. Then in round 4, Murrell picks the smart strategy. He allows Erwin to go first. Ethan's able to go 10 of 10 for 10 points, while Murrell's only able to go 9 of 9 for 9 points. Murrell passing on 1 question. So that results in a 23-23 tie heading into the 5th and final round, or so we thought, as they both hit their 2 and their 3, but missed their 5. So we're still tied heading into sudden death. It takes 5 questions, but eventually Murrell's able to pull ahead, and that results in the 32-31 Dangerous Dan Murrell win. He holds on to the title, and he proves he's the greatest of all time. And here's why I say that. Number 1, the biggest thing, Dan Murrell closes games. That is the most important thing I think that you can expect out of any superstar in any sports league. You need LeBron James to close games. You need James Harden to close games. If you're talking football, you need Tom Brady to close games. The best to ever play, or at the very least, the best players on their teams close games. And that's exactly what Dan Murrell does in this one. He gets to sudden death, but the difference between a great player and the greatest player is that when they go to sudden death, the best player beats the great player. And that's, I think, what we saw here. Ethan Erwin is no slouch. He is a great player. But not only does Dan Murrell close out games, Dan Murrell adapts. Dan Murrell's has been in the league since season 2. He's one of those guys that has to adapt to the way the league is being played, like John Roca or Mark Riley or any of those other guys that have been in the league for as long as Murrell has. Murrell plays his first online match, and he's already speaking in code with Bobby Gucci in round 3 when they're trying to decide how much to bet. I'm sure that's probably a Ben Bateman strategic move, but nevertheless, that's not something that every person thinks about. You know, whether that was the Finstock Exchange as a collective coming up with that, or it was Dan Murrell. You know, Dan Murrell has to say, yeah, I'm okay with doing that, and has to also recognize that that's the way to win the game. And so the fact that he's able to adapt to these online matches quickly is a testament to both his skill as a competitor, but also to Gucci's management. And also, you know, the other thing is he chooses to go second in the new speed round. He's analyzed, or he's watched enough of the other matches to know that it's smarter to go second because the person reading the questions will have already read through them once aloud. Might give you a slight speed advantage. All of those things are why Dan Murrell's the greatest of all time. You know, he's 9-3 in title matches. He closes out games. He adapts to the game that's being played. He doesn't just play the game his way and hope it goes his way. He alters his gameplay so that he's continuously the best. And all of those things combine to make Dan the undisputed greatest player of all time. And, you know, I think that I used to say definitely before this season that, that you couldn't be the greatest player of all time and not compete in 3 divisions. And I wasn't necessarily ready to call Rachel Cushing the greatest player of all time because she hadn't won the singles belt yet, but I was almost resigned to say that we hadn't seen the greatest player to ever play the Schmoedown yet. But after watching Dan Murrell in this match and watching Dan Murrell this season, it is hard to say that we are not currently watching the greatest player to ever play the game play. Greatest player to have ever and greatest player who will ever play the game. I don't know how anybody could compete at a level that's better than Dan Murrell right now. And if somebody's able to do that, the only way they would be able to do that is to be able to do that across 3 divisions, which would be insane. And if anybody's insane enough to do it, I think it's Dan Murrell, which is even crazier. So I can't wait. You know, one thing this assures me is that I can't wait to see Dan Murrell step into IG, because I'm sure he's going to take some stumbles, just like Alex Damon did when he made the crossover, just like anybody else who's taking their first steps in a new league. But ultimately, I think it's just one more legacy bump for him. And look, the one thing that people will hold against Dan right now is that he doesn't play in IG, or that he doesn't play across 3 divisions. If Dan's able to get an Intergeekdom belt, we already call him the greatest of all time, and he hasn't done that. I don't know how he could be, how anybody else could make an argument for anybody else if he's able to step into that 3rd league. So I'm really excited. I know it's not going to be until next season, but just the prospect of that is really exciting going forward. Once again, on the losing side of things, Ethan Erwin. He's still a force in this league. And one thing that they talked about on the rundown, and that I'm going to echo here, is that I think that Ethan Erwin is more of a favorite now to win the entire tournament than he was before he started playing. Because, look, I had Paul Preston winning that quadrant, and obviously that's not going to happen after last night's match. He loses to Eric Zipper, but I think that Ethan Erwin has proved to be much more of a force than we thought. And also, I think that Sam Levine's management has done the right things for Ethan, because Ethan doesn't need that hype man. Ethan didn't need somebody to detract the spotlight from him, which is really all that Robert Meyer Burnett was going to do for him. Ethan needed somebody to walk him through the strategy, to walk him through when to use a JTE rule, when to challenge something, how to spin the wheel in round 2, how to attack categories. All of those things are things that Sam Levine is very good at, things that Sam Levine was known for as a competitor. And that style of management has been beneficial to put Ethan Erwin over the edge. Another player might need that distraction, that take the spotlight off me guy. But that's not Ethan Erwin. Ethan Erwin will play, just as well under the lights as he will outside of the spotlight. So Ethan Erwin needs the strategy side of things to really take the win. And Sam Levine and Ethan Erwin is a really great pair. And I think that it could be the type of duo that could win the singles tournament. So those were the big three matches that we're covering on the show today, but those weren't the only things that happened this past week. We also had 3 other crazy matches. Here they are. So James White got the win over Frank Moran, 18-15. The one main takeaway from this one is that it was really just a great showing by White. A lot of fortitude shown by rallying back late. That's a veteran type play to be able to do that late in the game. And to be able to get through round 3. And obviously he showed he had that edge that Frank Moran didn't in order to get the win. But I don't think that he played well enough in the early game to get past Bibiani. Bibiani's one of those guys where, like Ethan, like Dan, like Roca, like Bateman, you have to be playing near perfect to beat them. And even then, that might not be enough. So, James White certainly has a lot to work on. He had a 625 accuracy rate in his match against Frank Moran. He's going to have to step it up if he wants to get past Bibiani. And just from what I've seen so far, I don't think that that's going to happen. One of the other matches, Lon Harris had the big 18-6 knockout victory over Sabina Graves. Lon just looks phenomenal. His duo with Winston Marshall and Swag has been exactly what he needed. This delinquent character also has been exactly what he needed. He's 4-1 this season across all divisions, and he doesn't show any signs of slowing down. I think that he could do some damage against either Roca or Adam Collins. And, if people weren't looking at him to win his quadrant, he could have put up an argument here to do that as well. It all will just depend on how he looks next round against a more tested opponent in who I expect to be John the Outlaw Roca. And then finally, the final match from this past week, we saw Paul Preston taking on Eric Zipper, and Eric Zipper pulled the first massive upset of the tournament when he won 14-12 in a TKO victory over Preston. And I did not see this one coming. I don't think anybody saw this one coming. I had Preston in the final 4. I really thought that Preston would have this in the bag, but the ring rust was there. And also he got sullied with a difficult round 2 category. And that really turned out to be all she wrote. 2 things to address in this match. The first thing is that was an annoyingly smart challenge by Eric Zipper, because the truth is what Preston was going to get away with was what every competitor gets away with. We've always seen competitors, get a couple extra seconds after pens down. That rule has never really been enforced to the best of its ability, and it's certainly challengeable, without a doubt, as Zipper does to great, and the Dungeon and Kaiser as well, due to great effect here, because it prevents Preston from getting that perfect round 1. But even still, it's kind of like, it's one of those I'll call it a Chandru-esque challenge where it just feels like, yeah, you did the right thing. Yeah, it's within your rights as a competitor, but it just doesn't feel right within the confines of the game. And there's been a big conversation in baseball lately about the unwritten rules or whatever, and how, they're unwritten. They're not real rules. And maybe the same sort of turn is starting to happen for the Schmoedown here, is that it may be an unwritten rule to not challenge that kind of thing, but you'll win if you do it. As Zipper uses the challenge here. I think it really threw Preston off the whole game, and this game on top of that proved to me that Kate Mulligan is not the manager for Paul Preston. There seemed to be a little bit of a rift there with the Festival Darlings question. He seemed to still be very irritated about that question. I couldn't tell how much of that was the banter between the two of them and how much of that was actually reminding her that you screwed up. And nevertheless, after this loss, after 2 losses across 2 divisions this season with the Den, I don't see a situation where Paul Preston chooses to re-sign with Kate Mulligan. I just don't think they're a good fit. Paul Preston has the knowledge base. He needs somebody that's going to really connect with him on strategy. I don't think Kate Mulligan's that manager. Kate Mulligan's another spotlight manager, and Paul Preston is fine being in the spotlight. That's not what he needs. He needs somebody to know the game inside and out. And I don't know where that means that Paul Preston will go. It might mean that he might fall to the draft. But somebody like a Winston and Swag would be a good fit for him, I think. Sam Levine, obviously, would be a great fit for him. Any of those types of managers would be a smarter place for Preston to go next season, as he's kind of resigned to the fact that he's done this year, unless he participates in the team's tournament with Tom. But even then, I feel like it might be smarter to ride the hot hand with the Pride, because they've got more wins in the division this season. So who knows? We'll see what the Den decides to do, but nevertheless, they're in some rough water, getting one of their highest point scorers kicked out of the tournament. As we look at the actual bracket here, we're more or less set with the bracket. We're just waiting on Sabrina Ramirez and Vinny Mancuso, which takes place today. And then obviously Lon Harris moves on to face the winner of Adam Collins and John Roca, and Eric Zipper moves on to take on the winner of either Ethan Erwin or the winner of Sabrina Ramirez and Vinny Mancuso. So that's going to bring us to the standings update as things sit right now. We'll take a look at that here. We've got things more or less stay the same. Swag's still on top. Now the Finstock Exchange have jumped Corruption. They've got that slight advantage in the knockouts, which gives them the lead despite the fact that they're tied for second. The Dungeon moves up. They're neck and neck with the Den right now. And, Quirky Mercs also are trying to differentiate themselves with some wins from the bottom of the pack. Nevertheless, this is how it looks going forward. Corruption is in a battle for that top spot. They cannot lose to the Founding Fathers in the big pay-per-view match this weekend. And likewise, the Exchange has to have the Founding Fathers win, or they have to have Who's the Boss win, and they would really prefer for both teams to win to give them that massive advantage and move them back into that top spot that they held for so long before relinquishing it ultimately to Swag. Some other key things to note about this upcoming week: the Rockstars have 3 matches. They got to have 3 wins. They're sitting at 12 points. They're in that they're sitting in the bottom of the middle pack. And I think that if they want to try to make a crazy, phenomenal late game run for this faction win, then bottom line is they have got to get wins out of all three players they've got playing this week. They've got Vejvoda and Draco and David Del Rio playing in the tournament over the course of this next week. They got to get a win out of all three of them. And it's going to be tough because the usual suspects are at the bottom right now. They've got Jader Paramo facing up against Jim Vejvoda. It's must win for both teams. Mark Andraco plays Matt Atchity. It's the Burning Droogs are also in that similar place to the usual suspects where it's must win for them too. So everybody's kind of in this must win situation right now. Except for the Finstock Exchange, who obviously have must wins with the big matches, but they also have Sabrina Ramirez playing, and they would like to see her get a win. But I think that the team will survive if they don't, so long as they get a win out of one of Founding Fathers or Who's the Boss, but preferably both of them. So that's going to do it for the show this week. I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Once again, please head on over to rtqpodcast.com. If you want full breakdowns of the matches that I didn't quite cover as in depth, we've got them there. Plus, any news that breaks is going up on that site. And I'm trying to churn out some more editorial articles, trying to take some more analytical looks at the Schmoedown going forward. So all of those things are going to be on the website. If you prefer to listen to the show rather than watch it on video, we are on all podcasting platforms thanks to Anchor. So be sure to check us out on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Stitcher, just about anywhere, you name it. We're probably on there thanks to Anchor. But just know, if you're listening in audio-only format, you're only getting about half the show because I put a lot of work into the graphics and everything else for this show, and all of that can be seen on the video format of the show at youtube.com/David Sackrider. If you're watching on the video form of the show, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us get this show out to more and more Schmoedown fans, which is important for booking guests for interviews, which is important for growing the show and allowing me to do more things with the website. All of that comes with higher engagement here on YouTube. The other thing is, if you're listening to it on the podcasting format, I would really, really ask that you give us a review, give us a rating on there. Be greatly encouraged. If there's something you want to see on the show, reach out, tweet us at RTQ Podcast, and we'll try to cover it going forward, whether that's in an article format, whether that's here on the show. We're always looking for new ideas, so be sure to tweet us at RTQ Podcast with those. And in that same vein, you can follow us at RTQ Podcast on all social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The best way to stay up to date with the show and all the happenings in the Schmoedown is at RTQ Podcast. You can follow me at POTUS107, but that's going to do it for the show this week. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in, and so long.